Did you know that Joker, Folie à Deux, cost more than 3 times what the original Joker did with a staggering $200 million budget? Or that director Todd Phillips refused to do any test screenings, making its Venice Film Festival premiere the first time anybody saw it? When Warner Bros. Greenlit a sequel to their billion-dollar hit, they probably didn't expect to get a musical that would earn a historically low D cinema score. In an era where superhero fatigue is real, Joker 2 didn't just stumble, it completely redefined what a comic book movie disaster could look like. In 2024, Joker Folie à Deux arrived in theaters, promising an unprecedented pairing of Oscar winner Joaquin Phoenix and pop icon Lady Gaga. What audiences got instead was something that left both critics and fans baffled. Nearly 5 years after the original Joker revolutionized comic book movies, its sequel has become one of the most controversial and divisive films in recent memory. The question is, how did a follow-up to one of the most successful R-rated films of all time go so wrong? From The Dark Knight to Batman '89, Hollywood has given us dozens of memorable Joker portrayals, but Folie à Deux stands apart, and not in a good way. It's not just about the jarring shifts in tone or the musical numbers. It's about a fundamental misunderstanding of both the character and audience expectations. In this video, we're going to break down the 7 reasons why Joker 2 failed. But before we dive in, a real quick ask as always that if you're new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe. It's a small click for you, but a huge deal for us. Thanks. Number 1. The forced follow-up. While the original Joker was conceived as a standalone piece, the sequel's very existence speaks to Hollywood's addiction to franchising. Todd Phillips himself stated in 2019, "We have no plans for a sequel. We always pitched it as one movie and that's it." And yet here we are, with a follow-up that cost nearly $200 million to make, more than triple the original's budget. This fundamental shift from a focused character study to a big-budget spectacle reveals the first major crack in the foundation. The original Joker succeeded precisely because it was small, intimate, and personal. By throwing money at the sequel, Warner Bros. Inadvertently changed the very DNA of what made the first film work. Perhaps the most controversial decision in Folie à Deux was its transformation into a quasi-musical. While the original Joker had memorable musical moments, like Arthur's bathroom dance, the sequel took a bold leap that left many viewers scratching their heads. Phillips insisted it wasn't really a musical, telling Variety, "I just don't want people to think that it's like In the Heights, where the lady in the bodega starts to sing." But this half-hearted approach to the genre may have been worse than going all in. The musical numbers themselves feel strangely restrained, with Phoenix deliberately singing poorly and many songs cut short before their natural conclusions. Lady Gaga, one of the world's most powerful vocalists, finds her talents oddly muted. It's as if the film is embarrassed by its own musical identity. Compare this to successful dark musicals like Sweeney Todd or Cabaret. These films fully embrace their musical nature while maintaining their edge. Folie à Deux, however, tries to have it both ways and ends up satisfying neither musical fans nor those who love the gritty realism of the original. Number 2. The identity crisis. At its core, Joker Folie à Deux suffers from a severe identity crisis. The first film was clear about what it wanted to be, a character study of mental illness and societal decay dressed in comic book clothing. The sequel, however, tries to be everything at once: a musical, a love story, a courtroom drama, and a comic book movie. The majority of the film takes place in Arkham Asylum, where Arthur awaits trial for his crimes. But rather than using this setting to delve deeper into his psyche, the movie gets bogged down in legal proceedings and dream sequences. The court case itself feels anticlimactic. After all, we already know Arthur committed the murders. The tension that drove the first film is noticeably absent. Lady Gaga's introduction as Harley Quinn, or Lee as she's called here, should have injected new energy into the story. Instead, her character becomes part of a larger problem: the film's inability to commit to any single direction. Is she manipulating Arthur? Is she truly in love with him? The movie seems afraid to take a definitive stance. Number 3. The DC disconnect. One of the most telling aspects of Folie à Deux's troubled production was its complete separation from DC Studios. Despite being based on one of DC's most iconic characters, director Todd Phillips wanted nothing to do with DC, according to industry insiders. The film doesn't even include the DC Studios logo in its opening sequence, a clear statement of intent that may have alienated the core fanbase. This disconnect from the larger DC universe isn't inherently problematic. The first Joker proved you could tell a compelling story in isolation. However, when you're spending $200 million on a comic book movie, deliberately pushing away the built-in audience seems like a risky strategy at best and arrogant at worst. Number 4. The box office breakdown. The numbers don't lie, and for Joker Folie à Deux, they tell a brutal story. Opening to just $40 million domestically, less than half of the original's $96.2 million debut, the sequel immediately showed signs of trouble. But it's the film's catastrophic second weekend drop that really tells the tale. To put this in perspective, the first Joker cost $60 million and grossed over $1 billion worldwide. Folie à Deux, with its $200 million budget and nearly $100 million marketing spend, needs to make at least $450 million just to break even. Industry analysts are now projecting it will struggle to reach even that modest goal. The failures become even more stark when you consider the talent involved. Phoenix, fresh off his Oscar win for the first film, commanded a $20 million salary. Lady Gaga, brought in to add star power and musical credibility, earned $12 million. Phillips himself took home $20 million. These massive upfront costs meant the film needed to be a blockbuster just to avoid losing money. Number 5. The critical response. The D cinema score that Folie à Deux received isn't just bad, it's historically bad. To put this in perspective, even the universally panned Madam Web managed to score a C+. When audiences were polled leaving theaters, the disconnect between expectations and reality became painfully clear. Critics were similarly divided, with the film currently sitting at a 32% on Rotten Tomatoes. Many pointed to the same fundamental issues: the awkward musical elements, the meandering courtroom plot, and most importantly, the film's apparent disdain for its own source material. What's particularly interesting is how the film seems to actively push against what made the first one successful. Where the original Joker was lean and focused, Folie à Deux is bloated and scattered. Where the first film's violence felt purposeful and shocking, the sequel's few action sequences feel almost apologetic. Number 6. The production problems. Behind the scenes, Folie à Deux was plagued by creative conflicts. Phillips insisted on shooting in Los Angeles despite Warner Brothers' preference for London, where production costs would have been about 20% lower. The director also refused to do any test screenings, meaning the first time anyone outside the production saw the film was at its Venice Film Festival premiere. This lack of feedback may explain why so many fundamental issues made it to the final cut. Traditional test screenings might have revealed the audience's confusion over the musical elements, their frustration with the courtroom scenes, or their disappointment with the lack of actual Joker-style mayhem. The failure of Joker Folie à Deux isn't just a single studio's problem. It could reshape how Hollywood approaches both comic book movies and big-budget musicals. Warner Brothers had already been struggling with recent disappointments like Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom and The Color Purple. This latest setback comes at a particularly challenging time for the studio. Even more concerning is what this means for the future of experimental comic book films. The first Joker proved that audiences would embrace a darker, more character-driven take on familiar material, but the sequel's failure might make studios more hesitant to take similar risks, pushing them back towards safer, more conventional superhero fare. Number 7. What we lost. Perhaps the most tragic aspect of Folie à Deux is how it might affect the legacy of the original film. The 2019 Joker was a cultural phenomenon that proved comic book movies could be serious adult dramas. It earned 11 Oscar nominations and won 2, including Phoenix's Best Actor victory. Now its sequel risks tarnishing that achievement. Compare this to other successful comic book movies that avoided sequels, like Logan or The Dark Knight Rises. These films understood that sometimes one complete story is better than an extended universe. As Todd Phillips himself said in 2019, "We always pitched it as one movie." In hindsight, those words feel particularly prophetic. The real tragedy of Joker Folie à Deux isn't just its box office performance or critical reception, it's the lost potential. Lady Gaga, who's proven herself capable of extraordinary performances in films like A Star is Born, feels wasted in a role that never quite decides what it wants to be. The chemistry between her and Phoenix, which could have been electric, is instead muted by the film's confusing tone and genre mixing. And those are the reasons why Joker Folie à Deux went so wrong. So, what do you think? Was the musical element a bold, creative choice or a fatal mistake? Should they have left the original Joker as a standalone film? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. This video was made by movie fans for movie fans.